Hello and welcome to Route 99. This is DPM 81. We're looking at some verbal ability questions today. The first question I have here is a parasummary based question. I'm going to read this passage and I'm going to choose the best summary from these options. Okay, during the 1990s, throughout Eastern Europe, people witnessed profound economic changes. The transformation period was characterized by contradictions. Okay, so in the 1990s, there was a significant economic growth in the Eastern Europe, but this growth, this transformation, had its own contradiction. It gave rise to great political and economic accomplishment, but also innumerable socio-economic tragedy. So while it of course had positive implications on politics and economics, it also led to various socio-economic tragedies. Social upward mobility expectation for many did not materialize. So many had expected that they would move upward in the societal hierarchy, but that did not materialize. In disadvantaged regions, poverty surged and many lives were lost due to health related complications. So, on the contrary, in some disadvantaged regions, in some underprivileged regions, poverty rise and many people lost their life due to health related complications. In an analogy to the deindustrializing rust belt in the United States, social scientists have described the profound health consequences in certain regions and societies of Eastern Europe as death of despair. So, drawing an analogy to this situation from with the Rust Belt in United States, people have called it deaths of despair. In some areas, especially in the post-Soviet societies, further east, economic shock became a persistent reality. In the 1990s, in Eastern Europe witnessed a complex landscape of economic change. True. With both positive development, why is it called complex? Because it had its own contradictions. Right. With both positive developments and deaths of despair due to poverty and health issues in disadvantaged area. And this sums up everything. This talks about the economic change in Eastern Europe. This also talks about its complexities, its contradictions. That it had both positive and negative changes. It of course it led to positive development in terms of politics and economics in the country, but it also led to various deaths of despair, right? Due to poverty and health issues in disadvantaged area. This pretty much sums up everything. Seems like the correct summary. Eastern Europe during the 90s experienced a transition from initial economic prosperity to a range of complex social issues. No, these were simultaneous. This economic prosperity and complex social issues were simultaneous. So the transition was not such that first economic prosperity was achieved, then these complex issues arose. No, that is not it. Wrong. During the 90s, Eastern Europe achieved a significant and profound economic accomplishment. Yet these were overshadowed by a disconcerting surge in tragedies referred to as deaths of despair. So yeah, this also states all the argument, but if you see it here, it's a little distorted. It doesn't talk about the poverty and health in disadvantaged areas. It just directly comes to the conclusion of deaths of despair. So this is missing a point, not my summary. The 1990s in Eastern Europe were laden with escalating socio-economic issues and health-related complications. तो जहाँ पे passage में the argument started with the prosperity in Eastern Europe, here they are firstly referring to socio-economic issues and health-related complications in the country, in the region, right? And it talks about escalating socio-economic issues, but there were positive development in social and political stratas in the country. So ये तो नहीं हो सकता. Consequently, the term deaths of despair was introduced, or was it just used? It wasn't introduced, but it was just used. So this is also wrong. Hence, one is my correct summary. Okay, next we have here is a parasymbol question. Let's try to arrange these sentences into a coherent paragraph. To be sure, creative works disintegrate. Okay, so not my introductory paragraph. The farther back in time we look for signs of creativity, the fewer creative works of that time remains with us today. Okay, the farther we go back in time, the less creative works. मतलब जितना टाइम में पीछे जाते हैं और यहाँ देखें तो very few of those times creative works has lasted till the date. But by corroborating theory and data from different fields, we are on our way towards putting together a coherent picture of how and when the creative abilities of human arose. Okay, but if you put theory and data into a collaboration, if you put them together, we are on our way towards putting together a coherent, a meaningful picture of how and when the creative abilities of human arose. When did human acquire the creative abilities? Looking at an artifact fashioned thousands of millions of years ago is an awe-inspiring experience because it gives us glimpses into the life and worldview of our earliest ancestors. Okay, so now one has started making sense that if you look at the artifacts created, fashioned millions of years ago, it is awe-inspiring because it gives us the glimpses of in the lives of our earliest ancestor. And to be sure, creative works disintegrate. So 4, 1, but it didn't disintegrates. But if we corroborate theory and data into one thing, we would reach somewhere. And the farther back we go in time, we see that how less of the work of our ancestors has remained with us till the date. So my correct order is 4132. Okay, moving on. Next question. Okay. The irony encapsulated in Hippopotamonstros scudellophobia served as a pedagogical purpose. Serves a pedagogical purpose. Hippopotamonstros scudellophobia is a term that encapsulates a sense of irony with its very construction. Okay, so if I place it here, I would say that it serves a pedagogical purpose. What sense would it make before while purporting to describe the fear of long words? So this would create an unnecessary break between these two sentences. This here explains what this word is, right? So first it said that it encapsulates a sense of irony within its very construction. And why does it do so? Because although it describes the fear of long words, it itself is so long, it itself is 33 letter behemoth, likely to instigate the very anxiety it aims to label. Right? तो इसका मतलब क्या होता है? It's the fear of long words. So it's so ironical कि ये जिस चीज़ का डर है ये इंसान को वही चीज़ फील कराएगा. So this is not a mere coincidence but rather an example of linguistic joke that can be tracked back to blend of Greek words. Right? So this is not just a coincidence. It has been done on purpose. It was intentional, that it was meant as a linguistic joke. It's a blend of Greek words. The term is a combination of hippopotamus. See, again there is a connection. It says that it's a blend of some Greek words and the term is a combination of hippopotamus, monstrous and sesquipedalian. The latter being the term used to describe long words or tendency to use long words. Okay, तो इसका मतलब होता है the tendency to use long words. Intriguingly, despite its length and complexity, it is not a term widely accepted in psychological or medical literature, often regarded more of a humorous term than clinical diagnosis. Okay, now it has started talking about purpose. What purpose it serves? It is not used in psychological or medical literature, but it serves a pedagogical purpose. So I have to put it here in the three. Let's just read forth. It triggered an immediate curiosity, luring the reader into deeper exploration of the phobias and fears associated with language. As such, this word, in all its cumbersome glory, becomes a didactic tool encouraging people to think critically the fear we associate with language and expression. So here it would make no sense After saying all this, we are saying that it serves a pedagogical purpose. But here, if we see, it says that it does not. It is not used in psychology. It is not used in medical literature, but it only serves a pedagogical purpose. And then it explains that what and why it is used in uses to serve a pedagogical purpose. So three is my correct option. Fourth question. Rabindranath Tagore's Kabuliwala captures the immigrant experience like no other story. Okay, seems like my introductory statement. It starts the conversation about a poem by Rabindranath Tagore, but could be it. Let's just leave the other options to be sure. It reminds us that person coming to our country carrying a memento, handprint of the child is parent, like we could be a parent, a human beings like we are human beings. Okay, whether it's America who are scared of Mexicans, or German who are scared of Syrian migrants, everyone should read Kabuliwala because it reveals something we have forgotten. Okay. Real life Kabuliwalas were very much feared in the 19th century India, but here in this story we see Kabuliwala who is also a father. Okay. So there is a clear connection between 1 and 4. 1 starts the conversation about Kabuliwala, while 4th elaborate what Kabuliwala is about. So 1 and 4. Then I'll have to put 2 here because it says that it reminds us of something. If I would put 3 here, then this 2 would stop making sense. So I'll have to put 2 after this and then last में 3. So my order is 1, 4, 2, 3. Okay. There is a significant tension between freedom of expression and the administration of justice because the high public interest in maintaining and protecting both principles. Okay, so there is a little contradiction between freedom of expression and administration of justice. Maybe the passage is going to talk about. Okay, let's just read it. Why there is a contradiction between freedom of expression and administration of justice? Contempt of court is an exigent part of judiciary. It's an important part of judiciary. Contempt of court. What is contempt of court? So if disrespect of court in layman terms is disrespect of court. So if you are summoned by court and you do not appear before the court, you have contempted the court, you have disrespected the court. So that is contempt of court. You cannot say something derogatory about court. That would be a contempt of court. Besides, the basic principle for a democratic country is considered to be that the people are supreme and all judicial authorities are their servants. So, in democracy में क्या होता है कि people are supreme, people are on the pedestal, they are above everything and everything below them is they are just servant. Surely the supreme has the right to criticize the servant if the servant does not act or behave properly. So now we see the contradiction that people are the supreme in a democracy and they have the right to criticize all of their servants, and judiciary is one of those servants, but that would violate the concept of contempt of court. So yes, we see the contradiction now. Surely the supreme has the right to criticize the servant if the servant does not act or behave properly. In a democratic country, the purpose of contempt action can only be extended to ensure the proper functioning of the court. So, in democratic country, the purpose of this law of contempt of court can only be used so thus we can ensure the proper functioning of the court. The power is not to prevent the master, the people, from criticizing the servant. Okay, so this law, the contempt of court, is not to prevent people from criticizing courts, which are servant, the judges and the authority. If the latter does not function properly, the judges or servants do not function properly or commits misconduct, in other words, the people are free and have the right to criticize the judges and the authority. But they should not go to the extent that it makes the functioning of the judiciary extremely difficult. So the author is trying to solve the contradiction that if people are above everyone and they could say anything to their servants which are judged, that would lead to a contempt of court. But that would not be a contempt of court if it does not hamper the proper functioning of the judiciary. If it hampers the proper functioning of the judiciary, then it is a contempt of court. So let's say that judiciary का responsibility is to come to a suggestion, to come to a solution to a decision to a problem, but it requires the testimony of one particular person. So it summons that person, and if he doesn't come, that hampers the functioning of judiciary, and that will be considered a contempt of court. If it does not do so, if it does not hamper the functioning of judiciary, then it is not a contempt of court. Then it is not a crime. In democratic system, contempt of court is viewed as an archaic measure given the people's ultimate freedom to criticize judges and authority. Archaic का मतलब होता है पुराना, old. So is the author saying that it is viewed as an archaic measure and people have ultimate freedom to criticize? नहीं, कह तो रहा है people have freedom to criticize the judges and the authority, but it also talks about that it should not hamper the functioning of judiciary. Contempt of court is in democratic system fosters respectful public dialogue about the judicial practice, given the supreme servant relationship between the people and the judicial authorities. So, is it the reason that contempt of court fosters respectful public dialogue? No. It talks about all the arguments made in the passage, but it distorts them a bit. The contempt of court fosters respectful public dialogue about judicial practices, given the because of supreme servant relationship between the people and the judicial authorities. No. In democracies, contempt of court is designed to protect judges from public criticism. No. Thereby sustaining an unblemished judicial system. So is contempt of court established, is designed to protect judges from public criticism? No. It is just to ensure the smooth functioning of judiciary. So this is not my answer. In democratic countries, contempt of court balances judicial integrity with citizens' right to critique, as long as it doesn't disrupt court function. Now this is exactly what the passage is saying. So this is my correct option. That in democratic countries, contempt of court is okay until it balances judicial integrity with citizens' right to criticize the public servants, and it should not disrupt the court functions. So this is my correct summary. So that was the video, guys. I'll see you in the next one.